So in this tutorial, I'm going to be going over how to craft every single ingot in the Create mod. We're going to go over copper, zinc, brass, polished rose quartz, chromatic compound, shadow steel, and refined radiance. If you head down to the description, there'll be a timestamp for each of these ingots if you would like to just see how to craft a certain one. We're going to start off pretty simple with copper. So with copper, you're going to find this copper ore just around the world, and you can mine it with a stone pickaxe. And one thing you're going to notice as I'm mining this is, first of all, the ore turns orange, and then back behind it's kind of got this reddish color instead of the green. Now, the copper will actually slowly change color as it oxidizes, and it'll slowly turn green. This will happen with the copper ore. It'll also happen with the copper block and the copper shingles. So if you use those on a build, just be aware of that the copper is slowly going to change color. There's really no way to stop it unless you have it behind glass or behind a wall. It's just the nature of the ore. And then what you can do with the copper ore is you can put it in a furnace, and that'll simply just smelt down into the copper ingot. Then moving on to zinc ore. To get zinc, you do need an iron pickaxe to mine it. And it won't change color, it won't oxidize like the copper ore does, which you can actually see it starting to oxidize here. And then it's the same deal, you can just put it in a furnace, and that will smelt down into the zinc bar. Then moving on to what you can do with the mixers. So to craft the brass and the chromatic compound, you do need to use a mixer. The way to hook up a mixer is you simply have to have a cog going into the side. You do have to use a small size cog, as the big one you won't be able to actually line up because it has to go right against this edge. And then to do that, you just have to power it. You can use any kind of rotational power. You just have to make sure that the mechanical mixer is going fast enough. If it isn't going fast enough, it will say up top that it is not spinning fast enough, and it won't actually craft the item for you. So first off, to craft the brass, there are two different recipes. Basically, the basics you're going to need are copper, zinc, and blaze powder or blaze rods. The recipe that I think is preferred is the crushed brass. To craft the crushed brass, what you do is you mix crushed copper, crushed zinc, and a blaze rod, and you get two crushed brass. The reason I would prefer this mode is when you get the crushed copper or crushed zinc through a crushing wheel, you get one guaranteed, and then you get a 30% chance to get two more, and a 12% chance to get some cobblestone, which you can use. Now, this 30% chance of two more, you're going to end up with about twice the copper, crushed copper, than from the copper ore. And then to save yourself a smelting step, you can simply combine the copper and zinc to get your brass. And then you have to smelt the brass, but you'll half your time. Another way you can do it is if you have the ingots, you can do the copper ingots and the zinc bars and blaze powder to craft the brass ingots. Also, with the smelting, you will 100% of the time use up the blaze powder, so I would really prefer to do it the crushed way. So to give you an example, I will show you how to do that. And you can do this up to a stack at a time. And the way to do it is you simply throw it into this basin. So you have the mixer, and then below that you can have the basin. And if you want to throw a whole stack at a time, you can hold Control and press Q. You throw it all in there. The arm will lower, it'll mix up. The more you put in at a time, the longer it'll take. And one thing you have to be very careful about if you're doing it the crushed way is you're going to want to make sure that you put the blaze rods in last, because if you put the blaze rods in first or second, there is a good chance that the mixer will sense the blaze rods first, go down, and turn it into blaze powder, and you can potentially lose lots of rods that way. So we're going to give this a second to finish mixing. Obviously, the faster you have the spinning, the faster it'll mix up. Then once the mechanical mixer is lifted up, you can right click on the basin, and you can see I got 2 stacked crushed brass and I got 59 blaze rods back. And if I did that the ingot way, I wouldn't get any blaze rods back. So then to craft the chromatic compound, you're again going to use the mixer and the basin. To craft that, you're going to need to use Dragon's Breath, which you have a 94% chance to get back, glowstone, rose quartz, and powdered obsidian. To get the powdered obsidian, you need to use crushing wheels, throw obsidian in, And it seems pretty expensive, but you actually have an 87% chance to get the obsidian back. So if you just get like 16 obsidian, you can just keep rotating it around until you get enough powdered obsidian. And then for Dragon's Breath, the way you get that is during the dragon fight, he will throw purple fireballs, and there'll be a lingering potion effect. And if you right-click with glass bottles on that area, you will collect the Dragon's Breath. And that stacks up to 64, so it's actually pretty easy to collect. So then to mix this up, you're going to throw them in. These can go in any order. There's no recipes that'll ruin it like the blaze rods. And it'll mix up, and you can simply right-click it and see we got the Dragon's Breath back, and we got a Chromatic Compound. So then moving on to the Polished Rose Quartz. Now, to craft this, it's a little more involved. The first thing you need to craft is sandpaper. And the way you craft sandpaper is you put a sand, a piece of paper, in your crafting grid, and this is shapeless. You can do a 2x2 or 3x3 crafting grid, and you get the sandpaper. Then you need to craft the rose quartz, and that's done with nether quartz and 8 redstone dust. And again, this is a shapeless recipe. You can do this however you like, and you get the rose quartz. And then to actually craft this, what you're going to do is you're going to put the rose quartz in your offhand, which you can do by just placing it in inventory, or you can press F. It'll automatically go into your offhand. And you're going to hold the sandpaper. You're just going to hold right-click, and you're going to polish the rose quartz. Each sandpaper can do up to 8 rose quartz into polished rose quartz. If you want to get more yield out of your sandpaper, you can actually enchant it. In the vanilla enchanting table, there are 2 enchants you can get. You can get Unbreaking and Fortune, 1, 2, and 3. So there I got Unbreaking 3, Fortune 2. Here Unbreaking 3, Fortune 2. That's kind of random. You can also put it in an anvil and put whatever enchants you'd like. So for example, you can put Mending on it, Sip Iron EXP Grinder, and you can just basically have an infinite piece of sandpaper. They do have a pretty basic recipe, so I don't know why you would do that, but it is an option. And the last 2 ingots you can craft are the Refined Radiance and the Shadow Steel. These are endgame bars, and they're used for only a few crafting recipes, but you will need to collect quite a lot of them, especially if you want the block zapper fully upgraded and you want the best tools. Now to craft these, both of them just have the same crafting recipe that says Chromatic Metamorphosis, and it doesn't really give you too much instruction how to do it. If you do hold shift over the Shadow Steel and the Refined Radiance, Shadow Steel will say a chromatic material forged in the void, and the Radiance will say a chromatic material forged from absorbed light. And basically to craft the Refined Radiance, what you're going to do is you're going to get a beacon. You will need to have at least 9 iron blocks, and you will need to activate it, and then all you do is you toss it into the light. One thing you're going to notice is that it will float, so you're going to want to either have to have a roof. If you do that, you're going to want to make sure you have glass above it so that the beacon light still shines through, and you're going to want to try to catch it as soon as possible so it doesn't float off. And you can do that a stack at a time if you'd like. And then to craft the Shadow Steel, what you're going to do is you're going to go over to an area with void exposed. You can either do this by breaking bedrock in the overworld, or what would be easier is if you go into the end, you can just simply throw it off the side of the end. That counts as void. What you do is you just basically press Q, throw it, you'll see a particle effect, and it'll float back up. It'll float back up infinitely, so don't worry about how high you are. It's not too important. One thing you do want to be careful about is it will keep some momentum, so if you throw it too far forward, it could potentially go under bedrock and be lost. So you're going to want to be careful. What I would do to do it is if you press F5, go right on the edge. You can hold Control, press Q. It'll go straight down. It'll come right back up to you. And then again, you can do that a stack at a time. So that's how to craft every single ingot in the Create mod. If you have any questions or you have any other tutorials you'd like to see, please leave a comment down in the comment section. And thank you for watching. Bye. Then we'll do a cut right here, because it's taking a lot longer than I thought. I'm doing a whole stack at a time, so it takes a while.
Why did you do a whole stack?
I don't know.
to show them that you can do one.
It's too late now. Still going.